Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having spectacular Monday afternoons. I am here this week. Next week, I will be gone. I will be off on what I would call a family vacation, aka a family work trip. I am going on a Star Wars Disney family cruise with the whole crew. But you've got me all this week. Just want to give you a heads up when everybody's asking, where are you? Where are you? Next week I'll be gone. I want to tell you, thank you for everybody who has been watching the show. Thank you for sharing Outkick the Show. Let's dive right into it. The banners are being made. They should be here very soon. And so I've got to tell you, my thanks to sportsbookreview.com, our new presenting sponsor. And we've got a lot to get to, but I would encourage you to go to sportsbookreview.com for all of your gambling and informational related needs, including such questions as who is trustworthy online, where can I go for info, where can I get my money in a good place. Go to sportsbookreview.com to get hooked up there. Several things to get to, but first I want to tell you, do you have too much credit card debt? Let my friends, you already see it popping in the comments, in thehomeloanexpert.com take care of you, and you'll be glad that you did. They can eliminate all of your debt on your credit cards and refi you, get you the best possible rate. If you spent too much over the holiday season, if you are drowning in credit card debt, or you just need the best possible mortgage rate you can find anywhere in the country, go to thehomeloanexpert.com, and you will be glad that you did, because your money will be able to pile up, and you will be maybe one day as rich as I am today. thehomeloanexpert.com. All right, much to get to. Let me give you the rundown here. I outwoke the coverage indeed. First of all, we got to talk about Woke Center. Woke Center is the show that ESPN is giving Jemele Hill to ensure that Al Sharpton does not protest ESPN for firing her from SportsCenter. It was on last night. It was a doozy. If you have not seen it, I'm going to tell you all about Woke Center, including ESPN's assertion that the modern-day Martin Luther King Jr., he goes by the name Colin Kaepernick, the person who's best entitled in all of sports to give police an idea how they should behave, it's Michael Bennett, the guy who made up a fake racial claim. And who's to blame for the challenges facing black athletes in America today? According to Jemele Hill, spoiler alert, it's white people. We're going to get to all of that. I can't wait. Woke Center review coming up from me next. Kim Jong-un. I don't know if you've been watching the Winter Olympics like I have. Last night I was watching ice skating, thinking the only thing I would like more than these good-looking people who are in great shape ice skating is I would like, if we could, in some way, to have fat guys who have never ice skated before trying to land leaps. Instead of the triple axel, I would just like to see a single spin from a 400-pound man in tight leotards. 81%, by the way, agreed with me on that play. And this is a massive story that is not getting as much play as I think it should. Comcast is now increasing its pursuit of Fox. For all of you out there who thought that Comcast had dropped out and that Disney had locked up the Fox assets, this is actually an intriguing story. Comcast bid $8 to $9 billion more for Fox's assets than Disney did. Rupert Murdoch took less money because he thought the Disney regulatory bid was more likely to go through. But for $1.5 billion, Fox could buy its way out of the existing bid. Could Comcast come in with a higher bid? The Wall Street Journal breaking the news yesterday that Comcast is potentially still interested in buying these Fox assets. I'm going to dive into this story as well. Three big stories for you. Let's go back and begin anew at Woke Center. If you are not familiar with Woke Center is the occasional undefeated, whatever it's called. Undefeated, which is a part of the website that nobody reads on ESPN.com, which is focused on black culture and the black athlete experience and all this stuff. and was John Skipper's creation to just throw millions of dollars onto a brush pile and light it on fire, because that would actually have been more efficient and at least it would have been warm. Instead, they're just throwing piles of cash at the undefeated, and it's disappearing and going up in smoke. And as part of that total disaster of a business plan, last night they had a special show from the church in Birmingham that was blown up. And inside of that church, they had a 1-hour special that they taped where they made all sorts of ridiculous statements that continue to devalue and explode the ESPN brand. Among those was one allegation by Jemele Hill that, I swear to God, she said this, that Colin Kaepernick is a modern-day Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I want to take a step back for a minute before we go forward again. I want you to think about this for a minute. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated for attempting to bring the full fruition of American life to all people, regardless of their creed, in the United States, particularly black Americans in a Jim Crow South in the 1950s when he began his civil rights protest. He fought for about 14 years in public before being murdered for his political beliefs. Colin Kaepernick took a knee on a football field while making tens of millions of dollars in an unintelligible fashion, and now is not playing football because he's not very good at football. One of the real flaws of American society today is this, and by the way, that ain't the same thing in case you're wondering, is this. We have an obsession with, quote, the right side of history. And this got asked of me when Politico came and did a profile on me. Everybody is obsessed with being on the right side of history. First of all, I want to go through this with you. It's hard to know what the right side of history is. Take it from me, someone who has been out there, who has been studying history for his entire life. We oftentimes don't know what the right side of history is, even hundreds of years or thousands of years after history has happened. There are relatively few exceptions, such as World War II. We were on the right side of history. The Nazis were on the wrong side of history. I think probably if you study American history, there have been many situations where the United States was on the wrong side of history and the country has still evolved and ended up on the right side of history. For instance, our treatment of Native Americans, our internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, our legacy of slavery. All of those were the wrong side of history, but guess what? You eventually end up on the right side of history. And if you are wrong in your era, ultimately you end up with a chance to end up on the right side of history. There is this obsession now, as if people are going to be sitting around in 60 years, like, my God, do you know that there were some people who weren't obsessed with what public bathroom transgender people were going to use in 2016 and 17 and 18? Can you believe that my great-grandchildren are going to sit around and they're going to read about the great North Carolina transgender bathroom battle of the mid-2000 teens? Or is it likely that stories such as those are never going to be told because they are totally inconsequential? What we are fighting about today is crap that is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Let me explain. My big issue with Woke Center is that there is a desperate demand that there be a right side of history. It reminds me of when I was a kid. When I was a kid studying history, I sat around and I said, man, all the great issues of the past have already been decided. And you know what? I think I was really right. By and large, for my life, and basically I was born in 1980. I'm like the oldest. I was born in 79, but close to 1980, right? There haven't been any major real battles for my generation to fight in the grand scheme of things. I came after Vietnam. I came after the civil rights movement. I went to integrated schools. Everybody has been treated, in my opinion, pretty equally by the federal government throughout the course of my life. The number of things where I could look around and say, man, you know what? That's really bad. That's really wrong is almost non-existent. And so I think people of my age and younger have incredible degrees of protest envy. They wish that they could go back in time and be on the right side of history so they could brag to everybody else on social media, hey, guess what? I was protesting during the civil rights movement. Check out this selfie of me getting sprayed with a hose while a German Shepherd tried to bite me. They wish they could go back in time and be like Andrew Jackson, don't let these Native Americans go on the Trail of Tears. I wish I could go back in time and be a great emancipator and help to end slavery. This is how people of my generation think. And so, there is an increasing demand to believe that there must be a modern day equivalent of the civil rights movement or the end of slavery or the free enfranchisement of Native Americans, that all of those things continue on a linear path. My question for you is this: what if we have reached the end of liberalism in this context? What else is next? I don't care about gay marriage. I'm happy that it exists. I'm perfectly fine for gay people to be happy. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what sex you are. I don't even care what race you are. Pick whatever race you want, just like you can pick whatever gender you want. I sit around sometimes and ask people this: what is left to be inclusive about? Honest question. What's out there now that is not inclusive enough that 100 years from now, people are going to be like, you know what? I wish in 2018 people had been more inclusive. What is left? Give me some suggestions on Facebook. Give me some suggestions on Periscope. What is left out there to be a part of the inclusive universe? I honestly don't know. Is it polygamy? Is it that right now we need to make sure that men or women can marry multiple people? I honestly don't know. I don't know anything about what is going to be the issue. We have reached peak inclusivity. Honestly, we really have. There is peak inclusivity. And so as a result, all of these left-wing discussions are so incredibly desperate. They're so incredibly desperate because there's no real opposition to any of these inclusivity arguments. And so the result has spread, think about this with me now, the result has spread now from we see tangible injustice to social media being obsessed with the overall fabric of America and things that you can't even see. We have gone from, we have to remedy this wrong, to everything is so wrong that it's impossible to be remedied, and that brings us to Jemele Hill. They have to be such try-harders because there's nothing else left to argue. So think about this. Last night on SportsCenter, Woke Center as I would call it, there was a 1-hour special from a Birmingham church that was bombed during the civil rights movement. The selection of that church is implicated by the decision to try to suggest that the civil rights movement has not actually ended in success, that it is ongoing. And that it is ongoing in what way? That it is ongoing such that Colin Kaepernick has taken the baton from Martin Luther King Jr. and is now the modern day Martin Luther King Jr. This is a terrible fallacy. All right? This is a terrible fallacy because here is what Colin Kaepernick has done in his life. He has made millions of dollars to play football. He has then decided to take a knee to protest the national anthem and some amorphous wrongdoing by police officers, which he's never classified. He has said that police are modern-day slave catchers. He has said that that Cuba would be a better place to live than America because people in Cuba have more freedoms, which is among the dumbest things that anybody has ever said in the history of professional athletics. He has said and worn socks that depict police officers as pigs. All of these things have happened, and what has he done in a positive way to make the country better? Nothing. As I have said before, his protest in quotation marks, was actually already being addressed by the female black attorney general, Loretta Lynch, and by the male black president of the United States, Barack Obama. He said he wanted more rigorous investigation of police shootings. Well, that was already taken care of. the Department of Justice was already conducting its own federal investigations of any local police shootings to ensure that there were no cover-ups based on race. They were also conducting civil rights investigations, which is how we know that a story such as Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot, it was a lie. The investigation from, at the time, Eric Holder, the Attorney General, and Barack Obama, the President, they investigated Michael Brown. They found that everything surrounding that story was a total lie. Okay? It was a lie. It was made up. It's a social media invented non-story. It is fiction. Okay? Many of the stories surrounding purported victims of police violence are in fact stories. The ones where there was evidence that deserved charges to be brought went before juries. If you are upset with juries not determining verdict of guilt when you want it to be guilty, take it up with O.J. Simpson. Sometimes juries get it wrong if people have the right attorneys. Or, I got a crazy idea for you, sometimes guilt and innocence is more complicated than a 30-second video you shared on social media. Crazy idea, I know. Sometimes it's more difficult to determine guilt or innocence than by sharing a 30-second video when it comes to being guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So, all of those things. She argued that Colin Kaepernick with a straight face was a modern-day Martin Luther King. She also argued that the reason why black people have such struggles in this country, this is Jemele Hill, is because of white people. This is flagrantly not true. And I just want to hit this for a minute. Do you know who the most wealthy race and ethnic group in America is today? It's Asian men. If America were a fundamentally racist country, would Asian men who have only been in this country for a couple of generations have shown up in this country and started dunking on white dudes? Balls to the face, I make more money per capita than you, bitch, hanging on the rim, Asian dudes grabbing their dicks and pointing right at everybody else. Would Asian men average over $80,000 a year per capita income, which is a lot more than the $68,000 I think the average white person makes? In a fundamentally racist country, would it be possible for young immigrant Asian populations, which have not been in this country very long, to suddenly show up and start dunking on everybody else? I think the answer is no. Asian men dominate in this country, okay? If, in fact, white people were to blame for everything, why in the world would white people let Asian people be more successful than them? Why would Hispanic people come into this country and rapidly climb the income ladder as well? The truth of the matter is this when it comes to America. The harder you work, the more money you will make on average. The more schooling that you get, the more money that you will make on average. Our racial politics are set in the 1960s when the 2018s are a lot more fascinating. To wit, there is a lawsuit right now filed by Asian people against Harvard because Asian people are being penalized when it comes to getting into Harvard because their test scores are so high and their grades are so high that they are being discriminated against in favor of other races to maintain cosmetic diversity. Asian people are so dominating in this country that they are now suing top institutions, maybe the top institution in this country, for discriminating against them because the racial palette, which is supposed to be even and cosmetically diverse, is not as cosmetically diverse as Harvard would like. And so Asian people are getting discriminated against because their performance as an ethnic group is being held against them. Nobody talks about that lawsuit. Nobody talks about the fact that our racial politics in modern day America are so much different than they were in the 1960s. That a tiny minority group, Asians, can take over every different, just about admission group in the country when it comes to achievement. It's really hard to get into Harvard as an Asian. It's harder to get into Harvard as an Asian than it is to get in as a white person. And it's about 10 times as hard for an Asian person to get into Harvard as it is for a black person. So when you talk about racial discrimination in this country that is overt, there is only one kind now. It is affirmative action. Now, you can argue that affirmative action either should or should not exist, but arguing that black people are being discriminated against in the country is actually the exact opposite of the truth. Black people are being discriminated in favor of, based on the color of their skin. And as the dissent said in a recent Supreme Court case, whether you agree with it or not, the way to stop discriminating based on race is to stop discriminating based on race. Now, the argument for affirmative action is there's a legacy of discrimination that needs to be redressed. And if you want to take that argument, you can. But the idea that black people are being discriminated against, that Jemele Hills of the world want to put out there, is actually not true. The reverse is true. Black people are being rewarded based on their race and solely based on their race, such that Asian people have actually filed lawsuits against black people to get into Harvard. It's a crazy, amazing story that is not being talked about. Okay? That is the truth. Now, in addition to that story on Woke Center, which is what they gave Jemele Hill to avoid the Reverend Al Sharpton boycotting the fact that she was given gotten fired on SportsCenter. To avoid that fact, they have this show. This show also, and I can't believe this happened, but I would encourage you to go read the article that I put up on Outkick. This show also featured Michael Bennett's essay arguing how police officers should treat minorities in this country. You might recall Michael Bennett, the Seattle Seahawks defensive lineman, who we previously talked a lot about on this show, was caught lying about a racial incident he claimed occurred in Las Vegas. Back in August, after the Mayweather-McGregor fight, Michael Bennett went to a casino. When he was in that casino, a call was made that there was an active shooter inside that casino. The police arrived with drawn guns and started to walk through the casino. You can see all of these videos. Michael Bennett searching for an active shooter, a scene that would happen, sadly, within a month. There would be an actual active shooter in Las Vegas killing dozens of people at a concert in Las Vegas. So this is what they were training for. They arrived with their guns drawn. As they walked through the casino, what should occur but Michael Bennett should come running through the casino, hiding from the officers, crouched down behind a slot machine. As the officers saw him and thought he was behaving abnormally, you can see the video. Everybody else is walking out. There's nobody running and hiding like that. They stopped Michael Bennett, requested that he be still, and let the police talk to him, and he took off at a sprint, at which time the police chased him and tackled him because they believed he might be the active shooter attempting to flee the scene of a crime. They then detained him for around 10 minutes in the back of a police cruiser. You can watch that entire video as well. They've released over 100 different videos of this incident. In the back of that police cruiser, they said, "We're sorry, we detained you. We were concerned about the way you were behaving. You didn't stop when you were running from us. Can you tell us who you are?" He said, "I'm Michael Bennett, Seattle Seahawks." He did not have an ID on him. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. I don't know how many of you have been out in Las Vegas, but how many of you have ever gone out in Las Vegas without your ID? And if you are not a hot girl in a skin-tight dress, the answer better be none of you have ever done it. Because unless you are a hot girl in a skin-tight dress, handing over your ID to the boyfriend or the husband that you are with, and I have had that happen to me. Fortunately, my wife wears skin-tight dresses, and she's really fucking hot. And when she says, "Can you hold my ID and my lipstick or anything else in your pocket?" Do you know what I say? "Yes, ma'am." I put that into my pocket, and I hold it for her. Unless you are a smoking hot woman in a skin-tight dress going out clubbing on the scene in Vegas, you should never be out without your ID. Guess what? Michael Bennett was out that night without an ID. Do you know what he said when they asked him for his ID? He told the Las Vegas Police Department, "Look it up, Michael Bennett, Seattle Seahawks." Is there a cockier move than when the police ask you for your ID, you tell them to Google yourself because you weren't willing to carry an ID yourself out on the town that night? That is one of the cockiest motherfucking moves I have ever heard. If I were a cop and somebody said, "Google me," I would want to backhand them with my palm because that would be a jerk move where you're trying to big time the cop. Most people would have just said, sorry, here's my ID. He said, Google me. They looked him up, looked at his picture, decided it was him, and let him go. What did Michael Bennett do? He alleged that these officers had racially profiled him. Here comes the irony. The 3 officers, 2 of them were Hispanic, 1 of them was black, and they had done absolutely nothing wrong. Michael Bennett's allegation of racism is the lead story on ESPN, NBC, CBS, and Fox. Do you know how many of those 4 networks covered the fact that he was proven to be a race-baiting liar when it actually happened? 0. Michael Bennett alleges racism. It's the #1 story in sports in America. Michael Bennett is proven to be a liar, and not one of those national television networks actually covered his being proven to be a liar. Then, all season long, nobody quizzes him on it. He never has to answer. He never has to apologize, even after members of the Las Vegas police are killed during that mass shooting, when we actually saw what happens when there is an active shooter in a casino. And instead, on top of all of that, that story disappeared. And then when Woke Center comes on, do you know what happened? Of all of the athletes they could have chosen to speak about police and minority interactions, they picked on Woke Center Michael Bennett to give an essay calling for police to do a better job listening to minorities. Michael Bennett, who alleged false racism against the Las Vegas Police Department, was the athlete voice that ESPN chose to speak out on minority police relations. There was nobody inside of ESPN that said, wait a minute. Maybe on this Woke Center episode, we shouldn't use the only athlete this year who has been proven to have lied about a racial incident to discuss race relations between police and minority groups. Nobody raised their hand and said, hey, crazy idea here. Maybe we shouldn't pick Michael Bennett, the only athlete in America this year to have been proven to be a liar. Maybe we should not select him. Nope. Everybody said, this is the guy we are going to pick. And if I didn't talk about it, you guys would probably have no idea it even happened, because everybody else in the world of the media didn't address this issue at all. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how crazy it is that I am the only person in the media who was willing to talk about it. You know why? Because everybody else is afraid they'd be called racist. If you say anything other than white people are awful and racism is unconquerable and you will never be able to survive without being a victim in America today, you are considered a racist. That's where we are as a society. The truth doesn't matter. It's all about how you feel. When I actually point out the truth, which is cops save infinitely more black lives than they take, no matter your race. If you leave your house this morning unarmed, it's a great stat for everybody to share, you are 5 times as likely to be killed by a train as you are a police officer. If you leave your house this morning unarmed, you are more likely to be killed by a wasp, a bee, or a hornet than you are a police officer. These are important facts that nobody else wants to talk about, and those should be the facts that they talk about on Woke Center. Instead, they continue this victimization storyline where everybody out there is, in fact, a victim. Now, I've done almost the entire show on this, and I've got to go have a conversation with one of the book companies that's trying to buy my newest book. We're in the auction process right now, and I got a scheduled meeting for this. So tomorrow, I will continue. I will talk about Kim Jong-un's sister turning the media into a bunch of teenagers as they all sat around and praised her, how glorious her performance was. It's like Hitler's sister rolling into town, Kim Jong-un's sister, and all the favorable press she got. She got more favorable press in one trip to the Olympics than Donald Trump has gotten in his entire life as a politician. We will also talk about the Comcast and the Disney battle for Fox. All of that will come tomorrow. I got riled up. I got excited talking about Woke Center. If you like this show, share it with your friends. We'll be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Fox Sports Radio. You can also go buy my First Amendment and Boobs t-shirt that's up on Outkick.com. Kim Jong-un we'll talk about tomorrow, as well as the Comcast and Disney battle for the future of the Fox assets and why it's such a big story. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. Don't be a pussy. Tomorrow, we will be off and running. Yes, we are designing Woke Center t-shirts for you guys. Woke Center t-shirts coming soon. Make sure that you stay tuned to Outkick to get ready for them. I love all of you. Thank you for spending your Monday with me. We will be back tomorrow. Get ready for Woke Center t-shirts. Show tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, nearly 300 a.m. FM stations. Welcome to Waco, Texas, 1590 a.m., our newest affiliate, Sirius 218, XM Channel 202. Get ready for Valentine's Day. Don't screw it up, guys. DBAP, my name is Clay Travis. Kisses from me to all of you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.